thank you for the opportunity from Salta, Argentina, in the middle of winter. It's quite a broad question, really, and I feel excited to answer it because it talks about stepping into God's mission. And as someone whose DNA is mission, because my parents were pioneer missionaries in Papua, Indonesia, and then later behind the Iron Curtain, it's always been a thread through my life. And so coming to Argentina 31 years ago to together with Hans to serve God with Latin Link. We're now in the north of Argentina, serving with the Anglican Church. And I would say, if I look at the opportunities that God has put me in, it's really like a kaleidoscope. So we are both ordained pastors within the Anglican Church, and I have a role as diocesan advisor. And a big part of our diocese are the Aboriginal communities here in the north of Argentina. And maybe say a little bit more about that later. But another part of my role is wider within the Argentine Church, which has to do with member care. And so some of my own experiences as a TCK, third culture kid, I'm able to use those and draw on experiences within Latin Link of mentoring and supporting. And we're talking about Argentine missionaries within the missionary movement from Argentina to other parts of the country. And part of that is also a fantastic course or other movement community called Perspectives on the Global Christian Movement. I'm part of the national leadership team of that with the courses and instructing in that, as well as local opportunities, which I'll talk to you a little bit more in a minute.
Yeah, I particularly like the word community in the question. As an Anglican vicar, I'm the coordinator vicar in the St. Andrew's Anglican Church. So there's a community there, trying to look after folk pastorally, to help them grow in their discipleship, outreach prayer, celebrating together. That is very much part of community. This coming Sunday, we will extend the community and baptize one of the little babies. So that's really quite nice. Alongside my pastoral role, there's always been the area of theological education and the training of church leaders. So that was right from the word go. That's how we entered into Latin Link. And for me, God's mission was a call to start lecturing at a Bible college in Buenos Aires. That is where Latin Link approached us, and that was 31 years ago, our first assignment. And that grew into working with 3 seminaries in Buenos Aires. And then the Anglican Church in northern Argentina invited us to come up north and to help them out with training, leadership training, but also lay education. So that's what we've started dedicating ourselves to here in the north. But that grew into a church pastoring role as well. So I'm trying to combine the two. I'm still connected with 3 seminaries, 2 virtual classes, courses on Old Testament themes, and one of the seminaries is actually a presential seminary with indigenous leaders in part of their formation, and that's very exciting. My particular areas are Old Testament and hermeneutics, biblical interpretation. And so that's always a tremendous challenge, but a real privilege to help people grow in that understanding and those abilities.
That's a great question. And I'm glad that it's actually sort of quite hard to choose what to share about that. And referring back to the first question, it's God's mission. So I'm not sure it's our impact or my impact, but it's a way of seeing over the years and over time how situations and how people have been impacted by things that have been done. So just for example, when we finish this today, this afternoon, together with our colleague who's also a pastor, I'll be going to the local primary school, which is actually a state school. And we have been invited over 10 years ago to be part of a local network, a community network within the city of Salta, of schools, the police, the health centers, and the churches. And over these 10 years, we've been able to develop relationships. So now we are being asked to go into the local primary school and give parenting talks to the parents. And sometimes we support the school from our church. We take a very small gift once a month to help with the program that they have every day to help give the children lunches. But when we go in, we say, well, we're bringing this, but we're also here to pray for you. Are there any concerns? And they have actually reached out to us several times with difficult situations within the school to ask for help, to ask for guidance. And so we're very excited about this, the opportunities that there are outside the church, and just a long process of investing in relationships intentionally and consistently. Thank you. It is about individual lives, isn't it? And asking this question, one particular person comes to mind, a young lad from our church community who we've been involved with in a number of years, from a very broken background, very difficult neighborhood within the city. And, you know, he came along to church and started following Jesus, enthusiastically reading the Bible, but in a context of a quite violent and abusive family. And so together with our colleagues in leadership, we actually decided to take him out of that, offer him an opportunity of internship within the church, shadowing us, building up projects. And his heart has always been for his own community. And so he's gone back, and he's a fantastic football player. He's gone back, he got together a bunch of kids he saw who were just out on the streets late at night, and started playing football with them just to give them something to do, giving them a tea time, giving them bread and milk, sharing with us some of their concerns, you know, if they needed clothing, they needed shoes. And this, in the course of 3 years, has actually grown out to a full-blown football club in the Salta League, which has now gone beyond his own, you know, jurisdiction and involvement. He's still involved. And interestingly, we are as well, as a church community. We've been able to go along, we've been able to express that our interest is in people, support them with one or two projects, giving them some resources. But beyond that, with the approval of the president of the football club, he said, it's an open door. If you want to come and talk to the parents, come and do what you like. Recently, the first team prayed in the league, and our colleague was able to go along and pray with them in the dressing room before. So we're excited to see how one person's life has changed, is actually impacting his whole community.
One of the ministries of our St. Andrew's Anglican Church is called Proyecto Compartir, which basically is a feeding program for homeless folk. It's been going for about 6 years now, and every Wednesday lunchtime and every Friday lunchtime, two different teams of cooks, ladies from the church, they prepare lovely and nutritious meals for the homeless, for those in need, and actually there's more and more senior citizens coming as well because of the economic crisis in Argentina. Numbers are rising, and about 10 days ago, we fed 74 people in one go. So that is becoming a major operation. It's having an impact in people's lives, also because we get to know them, we hear their stories, and I get to pray with them. They ask me for advice. We help them with admin things. Thinking of one lad with an alcohol problem. We helped him to start finishing his secondary education, and now he dreams of getting a diploma in nursing. We managed to enroll him in a rehabilitation center. So that is one life touched by our church ministry. Thinking of another couple who lived on the streets for about 2 years, all their belongings in a wheelie case. I prayed with them, talked with them, helped them to reconcile with both his and her family, which is still problematic. But recently they told me they have now managed to rent a room together. They've got a roof over their heads, and they are very busy trying to get their lives back on track. Thinking of my own, my theological education role, clergy and lay training, I just finished a 5-week course on Genesis 1 to 11. I had 39 students, 25 of whom were Baptist ministers in Bolivia. They were on a refresher course, thinking through Old Testament theology, and I still recall the delight of one of the female pastors saying, "Oh, I never realized that the Old Testament has such a depth and contribution to make to holistic missions." And she says, this course will really help me in my preaching and in my role as a pastoral caregiver.
We have been part of the Latin Link community for over 31 years, and we're obviously exploring it before that. So we do value being part of the Latin Link community. We value being part of community. Value being part of a team. We experience that very much. Those of us who go into cross-cultural mission, we say a lot of goodbyes in our country of origin, in our home countries. And through Latin Link, we actually have the real opportunity of experiencing what Jesus says when he says, "You leave father, mother, sons, daughters to follow me, and I will give you new families." And he does that in part through the community of Latin Link, with all its warts and all, but it is a community. And that's very necessary when you do a cross-cultural experience, when you go to a new country, when you're learning a new language, when you've got new customs and all those sorts of things. But beyond that as well, Latin Link, because it's not Latin Link, is also part of God's history story, was existent in Latin America before it was called Latin Link, with 2 previous missions. And so the history of Latin Link and its being known within the wider church context, being respected, gives us a framework from which to go out and be part of what God is doing in the church here in Latin America as well. And the resources, the backup, we have teams, we have people who can help us sort out things that we can't sort out. We have the whole network of people's knowledge, people's history, people's community to lean into and to draw on. So those are some of the things that are valuable in being part of Latin Link.
I would like to add to that. Part of Latin Link's community is also being part of that community is also being held accountable. It's not just a one man show or a couple that does its own thing. Functioning in the structure actually obliges you to give account of what you're doing, but also to be able to seek for help when things get difficult. And I think one thing I particularly value of Latin Link community is the concept of partnership. It's not an issue of coming in as Westerners to setting up seminaries or to planting churches. Right from the word go, when we arrived, I functioned under a Argentine director of a seminary, and it's always that sense of partnership, being in it together, seeking mutual support. So that really is, I think, one of Latin Link's particular strengths.
That's great that some of the things we've been talking about that hopefully are a fuel for prayer. So touching on some of the situations that we've mentioned, our second year of the Indigenous Seminary will actually be for 10 women because culturally we can't mix them. And so we would ask for prayer for preparing that, for selecting the candidates, adapting the curriculum and the living conditions and the requirements for teaching so that we're appropriate in order to receive the women who are leaders within their Indigenous communities. Some of them are ordained deacons, and it'll be a whole new thing to be trying out and to be living with. So that on the one hand. And then as well, wisdom to see who the key people are within this football club and the opportunities, which one we can see huge potential for development. One of the striders who will be with us shortly will be also supporting the work there. We believe that it could grow out to homework support, literacy opportunities, possibly for some of the parents. But we need wisdom to take on the opportunities. And then that brings me to, there's always a need for more workers. You know, the harvest is white. We pray to the Lord of the harvest for more workers. And I've said before on other occasions, I think every member of Latin Link could probably think of probably at least 10 opportunities where somebody would be useful and be able to serve and give input. But on that note as well, the involvement with the Perspectives movement goes beyond just the church that already exists, and we're looking to unreached people groups. There actually still are unreached people groups, and so within the Perspectives movement that I'm part of, would also ask for prayer as to how we take forward the courses. We've been very impacted by the pandemic and going virtual and going online. But there's a lot of value in doing these things in person, but also a lot of logistical and costs to that. So we're praying and looking with the national team as to what we can do and the strategic people and pastors who we can invite to be part of this, because the whole point of that is seeing that we're part of God's mission and it isn't complete yet. So those are the unreached people groups that we're still talking about.
Yeah, prayer points for our ongoing mission as an Anglican church in a city context. We anticipate that the Compartir program, the feeding program, will continue to grow. So that has involves a lot of challenges in terms of crowd control, but also in terms of economic resources to keep buying the food. And also in terms of being able to make meaningful contact with our friends, our visitors, and to continue to help them. So we value prayer for the feeding program called Compartir. I particularly value prayer for developing a sermon series. I do that for at least two Anglican city churches. So to be guided, to be inspired, and to discern what is needed in terms of biblical preaching and teaching. I also value prayer for selecting lay people that can help lead the church in terms of direction of church services, but also visiting of people, the frail, the elderly, the ill, so as to involve more and more of God's gifts to His church and to see people flourish. It's lovely to see the cooks for the feeding program. They really are flourishing in their service, and they feel that they really make a significant contribution and using their gifts. So that's lovely to see God at work in different people's lives.